If you want to resolve a conflict, there are a handful of different techniques you could use. My name is Lydia Richards. I'm CEO of Teamworks. I'll walk you through these techniques and give you a sense of the benefits and drawbacks of each, all in this quick overview. So, here we go. Conflict resolution techniques have two different characteristics, really. One is how much I get of what I want, and the other is how much the other guy gets of what they want. We'll start with avoiding. Here, really, neither of us gets what we want. We just look the other way or bury our head in the sand. And avoiding is actually a perfect way to handle some disputes. If they're so small you really don't care that much. Or, like, how about the guy who just cut you off on the freeway? That is a perfect time to use the technique of avoiding. Careful though, if either of you in the conflict really do care, then avoidance may make the conflict worse or bigger, or you'll come up with another one soon. Next is accommodating, or giving in. Now, this is a useful technique when you see that it's more important to the other person than it is to you. If you can give in cheerfully, by all means do it. The trouble is when we accommodate and it's the wrong technique, when we feel like we had to give in, then we could move to the victim corner, which can be so very toxic. Relationship, of course, work best when people kind of take turns giving in, when there's a back and forth to it. So the rule of thumb, accommodate if you can really just let it go cheerfully. And if you can't, then you'll need to consider one of the other options. I don't suggest the next one. That is competing or dominating. It's sort of the opposite of accommodating. It's when either by power or rank or intimidation, one person pressures the other so that they can get it the way they want it. Now, this is by far the best approach in some situations, like on the battlefield or in an emergency. You would not want two firefighters in a deep dialogue about who's going to put out the fire. When this technique is used in a non-emergency situation, it's called bullying. It's just icky. You may win the battle, but it will likely be at a very high price. In fact, competing or dominating is most likely to generate even more conflict down the road. So the next is compromising. Now, this is a very special thing. It's where both of us get some of what we want, but both of us leave some of it on the table as well. It's not a win-win, it's sort of like a tie. Compromising is about getting as close as you can and then splitting the difference. Now, one of the benefits is it is fast. You don't have to get into feelings or history. You just cut it down the middle. Now, while compromising can settle a dispute, it cannot bring about long-term alignment. If emotions are high and everyone is deeply committed to their position, compromising is not the best solution. Because in compromising on an emotionally charged issue, you run the risk of playing that never-ending game of whack-a-mole, where you might settle this dispute, but another one pops up somewhere else. Let me give you a for instance. A New York law firm rang us up to help settle a dispute among its partners. The firm was moving and the battle lines were drawn about whether or not there should be a snack vending machine in the kitchen. And everyone was going to the mat for their position, for and against. The managing partner just wanted the whole thing to go away. He was looking for a compromise. One day at lunch, he estimated that he personally had spent about 25 hours trying to strike a compromise on the vending machine debacle. His assistant shook her head. No, she said, it's closer to 40 hours. And at many hundreds of dollars an hour, well, that is bank. And the really hard part is that he had chosen the wrong technique. He had chosen to compromise on an emotionally charged issue, which means this question might get settled, but the vending machine was never the real issue. It was only the battlefield on which an entirely different war was being fought. When we sat down with those involved, we found that it had much more to do with power and respect than it had anything to do with a vending machine. And once those issues of power and respect were addressed in a meaningful way, the whole vending machine problem pretty much disappeared. I think they did end up getting one, put it in a back room, but by then no one even cared because the real issue had been addressed. Then there are two other ways to strike a compromise that I just want to mention briefly here. One is mediation, which is where a third party helps you come to an agreement, but everybody in the end has to say, yes, I'll agree to that. And then there's arbitration, which is binding. So that means you agree to go to arbitration and then you agree to stick with whatever the decision is in the end. Then there is the holy grail of conflict resolution, collaboration. It is the gold standard. Collaboration is the way to create a win-win outcome. The challenge is it takes time and patience and a willingness to get into some messy areas. It includes a lot of listening, deep listening, sometimes when people really don't feel like listening to one another. In successful collaboration, everyone feels seen and heard and valued, and trust grows. Collaboration is a creative process which can open up entirely new possibilities. And the good news is, this is all really possible. In fact, research by Martin Deutsch has demonstrated that win-win or collaborative conflict resolution is possible in 80% of conflicts. The benefit is that once collaboration is complete, people really do understand one another better. They trust one another more. They usually actually like one another a lot more, which means that they are less likely to enter into that next conflict. So there you have it, conflict resolution in a nutshell.